Okay, we're live. Hello, Internet. Who's out there?
Is it live in all the places, Sunny?
We'll just check and get everything set up. We will go to our Facebook page, see what's going on there. It says it would take a few seconds. Just going to refresh and see if we go live on Facebook. Okay. Yes. I believe we are live because I see a little live button. Yeah, there we go. We are live on Facebook.
I'm still figuring out how to share it to my personal page.
Okay. Okay, we've got some people. Morning, Katrina. Incredible dedication to make it from New Zealand. Hello, Gina. Please feel free to share, guys, those of you who are out there, and get more eyes on this. We're just doing that ourselves, so excuse us for fiddling around for these first few minutes. For these first few minutes.
And get your questions ready, or comments, or topics of discussion. We have Andy representing from Amsterdam. We have Katrina in New Zealand, Auckland, I believe. We've chosen the most humane time we could for the most global audience that we could, but we're looking forward to more users in Asia, so that we'll have to do this twice instead.
Just gonna put a post for all the people on the event that we did.
See some questions rolling in already. We'll get to those in a few moments.
Fantastic.
And this is our first webcast, everybody, because we're trying to, there's a lot of speaking opportunities and invitations to have me and MakeSoil visit various towns, but that is, that's a lot of jet fuel to burn. So instead, we're going to all stay at home and meet with each other here virtually. And this is our first webcast, so just bear with us as we get the last little streams going on all of our channels.
Yeah, I'm just gonna check out YouTube as well, make sure we're live there. Okay, looks like we are live on YouTube as well. And we've got some people watching there.
What's left, Stenny?
I'm just making a few last posts on Twitter. I think I'll just do that, and then we can begin. Yeah, so welcome everybody who's watching. As Josh said, this is MakeSoil's first experiment with live web broadcast like this. Josh keeps getting invited to conferences all around the world, but it's not the most ecological decision to take up all those offers and fly them around. It can be exhausting as well. So we're trying this out. We are live on Facebook Live via our MakeSoil Facebook page, on YouTube at our MakeSoil YouTube channel, and on Crowdcast as well. That's crowdcast.io. The link to that is accessible via our social media pages if you prefer that way. We're keeping this pretty free form and fluid. We're going to see what happens, who's here, what questions arise naturally, and talk about that. And so I think we can begin, perhaps Josh, for those who are joining from different stages. Some people might be using the MakeSoil platform already. Some people might be thinking about it. Some people might have never heard about MakeSoil. Some people might have never heard about composting or any environmental initiatives. So it might be a nice place to start. Josh, if you give a broad overview of what MakeSoil is, why we're doing this, and where the project is at currently.
Okay, so hello everyone. Most of you have probably heard of MakeSoil by now, and also most of you have probably heard that things could be going better with the planet, whether you're noticing social unrest or social inequality or the degradation of the environment or issues with the food system, that it's not really nourishing people's bodies properly, or psychological issues, people feeling depressed or disempowered given the global situation out there with climate change. And nearly every ill that you can mention, every situation that humanity is facing, it turns out could see depressed or disempowered given the global situation out there. Sorry guys, I've got feedback. Climate change. It turns out that making soil is a powerful way to address all of these issues. So literally making soil together in community out of our food scraps and yard scraps and bits of nature, and watching that all turn into soil through a special recipe that we can all learn, or using worms or other creatures in nature to help convert this matter back into soil. And we can address all these issues. We can capture carbon, we can put nutrients back in the food system, we can start millions of new gardens every year. And all we need is a few 100 million people doing this beautiful, simple act together. And we're very serious when we say that that's all it takes. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to need a dash of technology in this day and age. And that's where the MakeSoil.org platform comes in. So many, if not all of you, have been to MakeSoil.org. If you haven't, go there now. It's not just an informational website. It is a web platform. It is an operating system organizing and uniting all of humanity, the entire human race, into making soil together, because it is truly an act that we can all participate in. Because if you're alive, you're eating food, and if you're eating food, you're creating organic scraps and waste from that process. And it doesn't have to be waste, it can be turned into living soil. So this is the call to action for everyone to make soil together. And that's what the MakeSoil platform allows.
Brilliant. Thank you, Josh. So for those of you watching, please keep firing in questions and comments on various different platforms. If you want to be considered to get invited up on screen and have a chat with audio rather than just text, then join the Crowdcast link, and we can do it there. We have the functionality to do that there. We have a first question from Andy for you, Josh. How do I know if my soil site is working well?
So that question could be taken several ways. Quite often we get questions of, how do I know if my soil making process is going well? And so if we take that perspective, there should be no odor or even an attractive odor that kind of smells like the forest floor. And there should be heat if you're doing a hot process. So if you stick a thermometer into your soil maker box, you should be getting temperatures in the 120 to 150 degree range Fahrenheit. And things should be turning into soil over the course of a few months. You should start noticing a transformation of all the contents in the process. Now, if we take the question another way, how do I know if my soil site is working well? That's an even more interesting question, because at MakeSoil, we've created the concept of a soil site, which is more than a compost bin. A soil site is a communal place where people are coming together to have a transformative experience, because we really believe it is by the process of people watching their food scraps turn back into living soil that we complete a feedback loop that updates the human mind for ecosystem consciousness, for earth empathy, for community, for resilient communities. So a healthy soil site that is working well, is one that has your neighbors participating in it, that has other citizens, other friends bringing their scraps by, soil supporters, as we call them. So that is what a healthy working soil site should look like. Odorless, attractive, pest-free, a beautiful immersive experience, and not just for you, but for your neighbors and friends as well. Because it doesn't work out if a few thousand of us are doing the best we can to take care of the planet, if several billion of us haven't begun to participate yet. So this is a transformative movement to spread among our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers. It truly is about making soil together. And I guess the questions, Sunny, I guess people will have to monitor all the channels, right? Because there might be questions coming in on all these different places, but we'll find them.
Yeah, you can feel free to type them on any of those channels. We're looking at all of them. And as I said, if you want to get up on screen at any point, then it will need to be through Crowdcast.
And you'll just interrupt me, Sunny, if there's a question, or you'll paste it into Crowdcast for me?
Yeah, sure. Or I'll just put it to you directly.
Sure.
Perhaps a follow-up question that I know has come up a lot recently, which kind of follows on from Andy's question, Josh, is, so a soil site needs people involved. Do you have any tips from your experience about how to get soil supporters, as we call them, to contribute to your site?
So we have hundreds of soil sites on the map right now, hundreds of soil makers participating, and a number of those soil sites don't have any soil supporters right now. And that is something that you can change in an hour. So what I've seen over and over again is how powerful it is to be out there, um, tending to your soil site, sprucing up your compost bin or your soil maker box, and a neighbor is walking the dog down the street. And this is the power of doing it in your front yard if possible, instead of just your backyard, because you're out there making soil in full view. To flag people down who are walking by and to say, hey, check this process out. Have you ever seen the earth turn back into living soil? Like, I just got into this, or I've been doing this for a while. Would you start bringing your food scraps to this little area here? And you'll find that many neighbors are more than happy to begin bringing their scraps, or they have their kids start bringing it. And one story that's near and dear to my heart is that we built a soil maker box for my dad, and in his backyard, and his backyard is in a neighborhood that joins to other neighbors' backyards. And we saw the other neighbors in their yards playing with their kids, or mowing the lawn, or doing some yard work. And we just, over the course of 2 days, we just approached the neighbors in the yard. And within 2 days, we had 11 soil supporters. So 11 people whose food scraps were previously going to landfill all the time. And now all the organic matter, all the coffee grounds and banana peels and eggshells and paper napkins from these households are going into my dad's soil site. So that's how quickly it can change, just by being a little bit more friendly and extroverted, and just approaching somebody and telling them about the process. The other tip is to use the unique identifiers on the MakeSoil platform. So when you click on your soil site, you have a URL at the top that is unique to your soil site. So you can share that directly on your social media, or email it directly to friends. And there's even an invite feature in the platform that just was released a week or two ago. And so that's a way to digitally begin reaching out to people about your particular soil site, to let them know that you are making soil and that you would love their participation. And Sunny, if you think of anything that I don't cover, please just jump in.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Gina is thanking you, Josh, for your inspiration about her compost bin. So perhaps we could talk a little bit about that, and give people a sense of what you need to get started, to be making soil, composting, different options, and what MakeSoil is offering in this area.
Yeah. So I love that Gina referenced her gorgeous compost bin, because this is the time for us to transition whatever composting used to mean in the past. We're moving toward a future where it is a beautiful process, where it is an attractive process. So we're moving from the very ramshackle looking kind of compost operations of yore, maybe kind of in the rural places. We're doing this in cities, we're doing this in neighborhoods, we're doing this right next to our neighbors. And so we need to take care that these are very attractive and beautiful even. And there's ways of doing up your soil site so that when a soil supporter brings their scraps and drops them off and sprinkles some leaves on top and walks away, that they have had an experience that is very beautiful. Because if the comparison is throwing things into the trash or bringing things to your soil site, the more beautiful that this is, And the less attractive that this is, and I don't think anybody feels good about throwing the earth into a trash can or a waste bin. It's just kind of normal, but it doesn't feel good. But this feels really good. And so the better that you can make this feel, by situating your soil site under a nice shady tree, if you live in a hot area, or just having it attractive, that's voltage. The greater the difference, the greater the differential between throwing things in the garbage and bringing things to your soil site, the more attractive and enjoyable it is for people. And then people never want to go back to putting the earth into the waste bin. It just feels ugly. And we need to tap into that feeling to help snap people out of the status quo of today, where it is completely acceptable in most places to just keep throwing the earth into a trash can like this. So what do you need to get started? There's a lot of different techniques out there. There's a lot of different apparatus out there. And depending on your skill level and depending on how many neighbors you have and how much food scraps you have and what kind of pests you have to deal with, if any, some people have to deal with mice and rats and things like that. Other people, they rarely see them. There's enough snakes or owls in the neighborhood still, I don't know, something like that. Other people have to deal with raccoons and other people don't. So if pests aren't a major issue, you could use something as simple as a big hoop of wire mesh, of chicken wire or something like that. You could just make a large heap in your backyard if you really wanted to tend to it and mound it up to give it some verticality. And then you would have everybody bury their scraps right in the middle of it, or you'd make it easy for them. If that is too much of a risk of going poorly or pests or something like that, then we have this option of building a pest-proof box, soil maker box, that we've designed on the MakeSoil.org website. The plans are free there to download. It's something that can be done with minimal tools, with a saw or a circular saw or a chop saw and a power drill or hammer and nails if you really wanted. And that's something that an individual or the family could build in a weekend. Increasingly, we're asking people to share those plans with woodworkers in their town as well, who can turn them out very quickly. For a skilled woodworker, the joinery, the cuts, they're so simple, they could knock one of these out in a few hours. And so the Soil Maker box it's there to be a pest-proof, functional, high-performance, high airflow method for getting your soil site going. So those plans are at MakeSoil.org, and they're right on the left, Soil Maker box. We've put it front and center for everybody to download.
Great. What I could actually do is do a quick screen share and show you what that looks like. That could be interesting to show. Let's give it a try. Okay, are you seeing that okay?
Yep.
Yep, I think it's working good. So for anyone who may not have seen it or hasn't seen it recently, this is the MakeSoil platform. There have been lots of improvements this week and the last few weeks. And exactly as Josh was just describing, this is the section with all the info about the Soil Maker box that we designed. So this is what it looks like virtually. The dimensions are there. All the information you need is there. Here you can download the guide to build it yourself. And we are building a list of trusted bin makers that we know around the country and eventually around the world, who can, as Josh said, whack these out as professionals, but you can give it a try yourself too. Okay. So
Oh, and having a thermometer there is nice as well for people. Um, when your soil makers visit your soil site, uh, if there's a thermometer there showing that uh, that the contents of your compost bin or soil maker box are up to um, what 50 something degrees Celsius or 130 degrees Fahrenheit, it's that moment for many people, and especially if they feel the heat coming off of it themselves, that they actually experience that the earth is alive, that they really see the earth with fresh eyes. I've seen people um, uh, touch a very hot composting process and jump back because it's too hot to keep your hand there for too long, and literally kind of like look around for like a power cord plugged into the thing, right? Because we're only used to sort of seeing things come alive these days with electricity usually or something like that. So that this entire process is powered by microbes if you're doing a hot process, it's a really eye-opening and inspiring moment for people to have. And that brings up the option as well, the possibility of hosting little workshops and tours of your soil site with all your soil supporters, throwing a little neighborhood party for people to come over and start bringing their scraps. These are things that we highly encourage you to do. It'll be very transformative in your neighborhood and a beautiful experience for everyone who comes.
Great. So let's give this a try, Josh, where we can invite some people up and have more of a dialogue. So we can try Gina first, who's talked about her compost bins. So I will invite you up, Gina. Send you an invite via Crowdcast. You should have received that now. So whenever you're ready, come online. And it would be great to hear how you and Josh interacted, how you ended up getting that beautiful compost bin, how your soil site's going, and we can take it from there.
You got me. Great. Excellent. A live person. Hello.
Hi, Gina.
Hey, Gina.
Hi, Josh. Hi, Sunny. I've never done this before, and I guess we're all in the same bucket that way.
Yeah, it seems to be.
Well, do you want me to just say how I came across you and found you? Okay. The first video I saw was the Edmund Hillary talk that you gave in New Zealand. Now, I'm trying to remember why I was there. But anyway, I'm very associated with New Zealand in funny ways. But preceding that, with respect to soil, I had just finished reading Soil, Hope Soil, whatever. And I wrote, you've never heard of it. It's by a guy named Courtney Whitney, whatever. Anyway, it's some kind of, it's basically what you're talking about, MakeSoil, with respect to agriculture and ranching. I'll get you the address. I just finished reading this book. And I was looking around and trying to find out what was going on in terms of soil carbon sequestration. Stumbled across you, and I loved what you had done. I said, wow, this is great. Went to the soilmaker.org website, saw the design of the compost bin, even better than ours, and ours is pretty damn good. And I said, this is very cool because you've taken the next step from composting to talking about soil. And soil is fundamental. It's really, really cool. So anyway, in interacting with the website, Tomas was doing his thing. And one of the funny things that I did with our compost bin was we had some, I live in a group, well, forgive me for going all over the place. I live in a huge house in Amherst, Massachusetts, half a mile from the University of Massachusetts. And I live with 5 other people in a big group house. Of course, we generate great amounts of food scraps. I live next door to a bed and breakfast, which is owned by the same person. Our compost bin, which is gorgeous, is right between our 2 houses. And we feed this thing in from our house beautifully. I mean, we feed this thing fantastically. Do you still have me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So anyway, we've got a great compost bin. We're surrounded by trees, so we get plenty of leaves and all this kind of stuff. And we live in a funny, funny neighborhood. So anyway, the bed and breakfast is a hub of activity. And we had these 3 little boys from Italy with their family who were staying for the summer. And they're all enthusiastic about, doing things. And I said, I'm going to give you boys a job and I'm going to pay you. And I said, I want you to go dig worms for our compost bin, just to throw them in and stuff like that. Well, they thought this was the most wonderful thing on earth. And they kept bringing me cans of, gently handled worms, as much as little boys do. And I'd pay them like a penny a piece for these worms and throw it into the compost bin. But anyway, that's one of the fun things. But I love this compost bin because I do see throwing stuff at the top and then out the bottom comes this beautiful soil into which, we plant tomatoes and, different things around the yard and stuff like that. But it's managed by like 3 different people with different ideas of compost binning. And the sociological aspects of this overwhelm the technological by a million years. And, but anyway, when I saw your talk, I said, God damn it, I'm putting on my boots, I'm jumping into the compost bin, and it's big. And I am making sure this thing is live, active, turning it. And I found so much soil in there that needed to be harvested. I pulled it all out in the past week. Gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. I took pictures. I'll send them to you. And was able to top dress the gardens, top dress this, do, all sorts of wonderful things. Now, I haven't made a soil site yet. And I'm thinking about it, but I live in a very, very funny neighborhood. And I don't know quite how to approach, different neighbors or whatever with this, because I feel like, for me at least, if I solve the human part of this and get 2 or 3 houses on board, that would be awesome. And then the technological, how the app or the, technology helps with that process would be interesting to find out. So that's where I'm at right now, figuring out the people side of things, because it's a great neighborhood, but it's a funny neighborhood. There are people who are like ultra beyond me. Anyway, I'll stop at that point. Go ahead and ask me any questions you want.
Well, Gina, are you concerned about putting it live on the map, or are you worried neighbors are going to respond poorly?
No. I'm not worried about that at all. What I'm thinking is that I don't want to jump ahead with the technology first when I have not figured out the people angle of it, because frankly, I could go around this neighborhood and it would be much more effective on a people basis to, talk these things out. And in fact, I had even wanted to, because we have different kinds of people. My neighbor next door has one of those little plastic compost bins. And, I talked to them yesterday about that. And like, how do you do your food diversion and stuff? Well, we throw things into the compost bin, and then we put newspaper, and I don't even know if this is a very well-maintained bin or anything like that. And I think they'd love the community aspect of it, but they're kind of not there. 2 houses down, we have rotating groups of students who move in and out. And they're all oriented through their phones, like, well, MakeSoil.org, show me the app, and maybe, whatever. So I could take this bin to capacity with maybe 2 or 3 more houses. I can't even get the neighbors next door. I haven't tried yet. I live in a duplex, so there are 6 people on this side, 6 people on that side, roughly the same type of people, young, and, whatever. Our house, I've pretty much got everybody on with the program. The house next door, you can't believe how frustrating it is to get them diverting their food properly, and doing that sort of thing. So once I solve the human problem, the education problem, then the technology it's going to be like, yeah, that'll help us do this, that'll help us do that. So that's where I am personally. But I think, you know, your idea is fantastic, and our neighborhood would really, really benefit by something, you know, of that way of thinking.
Yep. So just remember that the website is there, what you're calling the technology side. It's actually there to help solve the human side of this.
Mm-hmm.
So making soil and community, which is something I know a thing or two about, it runs
Sure.
into little challenges like how many people can I support? Is my site going to get overwhelmed? And you can limit that on the website. You can choose when you're creating your soil site, how many soil supporters can I handle? And it might just be 2 other soil supporters, right? And then the education piece, how to get people on board, why is it important? Thankfully, that's like the first video that you click play when you go to the MakeSoil website. So it's just remember that it's there to help you with the educational challenge, with the social challenge. And once, yes, going door to door and just talking to neighbors is fantastic. And then getting them on the platform so then you can watch them dialoguing with each other around your soil site.
True.
And so, and it's developing all the time. So we would love you to give it a try, to use the technology to help with the people side. And then anything that it's not doing well or that you see an opportunity for the platform to help with, just let us know, because the platform is here just to remove every possible hindrance that people might have to making soil together.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And one of the things that I just keep going back to is the fun aspect of it. And when you said put a compost thermometer in there and, you know, let people see it, I'd love to be able to, you know, have the compost thermometer and, you know, a webcam or some whatever saying our compost, you know, pile is hot, and you know, and that kind of thing. People love seeing, you know, here we have Falcon Cam watching the falcons at the top of the UMass Library, and you know, like I would love to be able to, you know, have about 5 different houses, you know, engaging in a, I don't know, a friendly not competition, but who's contributing the most compost, or you know, with little what have you, you know, something of, but the fun aspect rather than the virtuous aspect, I find, you know, also quite compelling too. So that's, anyway, but I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Sheena. One thing I want to remind everybody of is that don't make this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. Like, don't think, well, I'm worried about it getting overwhelmed, so I don't want to invite 50 neighbors. Invite just one neighbor. Think to yourself this week, who is one household I can think of? Maybe they have kids or whatever, and I just want to invite them to start. And you can even create an unlisted soil site, and it won't show up on the map. And then you just send people the link directly to your soil site if you'd like. But I encourage people to invite even just one neighbor, because one neighbor quite often represents 4 or 5 people. They might have a household, they have kids, they have a family. And the transformative effect that I've seen, you know, when my dad looks into his backyard now, where the soil maker box is, every day these 2 little girls from the house out back carry their compostables out together, and sometimes they bring a school friend, and it's just a heartwarming scene that gives you hope for the future, and that's just from one household. So if we get everybody out there, all the soil makers and potential soil makers, to just think of one neighbor, one household to invite, that would be a great place to start.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Gina. I'm gonna switch over and yeah, and I'll invite Elizabeth. So bear with me, Elizabeth, while I send you the invite you'll need to join. Okay, I just sent that. You guys might have seen me fiddling around with the screens, so I'm gonna try and solve that problem. Elizabeth, you may want to join from a Google Chrome window. If you're not, if you're trying to join from Safari or something like that, you'll probably have better luck that way. And from a laptop or desktop is seems to work better. But perhaps while you're figuring that out, Julie, hopefully you're on a more compatible setup. So I'll try you for now, and Elizabeth, hopefully we can get you back afterwards. So Julie, I'll invite you up now. Okay, that seems to be working. And so Josh, Julie also found MakeSoil relatively recently, but I won't say too much. And we'll let her introduce herself while I figure out this screen. Hopefully we can show you, Josh and Julie, 50-50.
Okay, there I am.
Okay. Hi, Julie. Welcome.
Hi, Josh. Nice to finally put eyes on you.
Hi, Julie.
Hi. So I am located north of Boston, Massachusetts. I got interested. Sorry about the messy house. I got interested in this topic and was thrilled to find Josh and his work and the organization's work fairly recently, maybe a couple of months ago. But I got interested in this about a year ago now when I read the book Kiss the Ground. A friend of mine had given it to me, and it just I've been in renewable energy for a long time, over 12 years, and I was feeling quite despondent and didn't really have a path to really save our species and the planet that I saw viable. And until I read this book, I was rejuvenated after I read this book, and I took an online class with Kiss the Ground, and I've been, since last June, I have been reading everything and looking online and connecting with people around this topic voraciously. And I work in energy efficiency now to pay the bills, but this is my heart and my passion. And I connected with a group where I invited everybody through Melissa, who works with Mothers Out Front. And they have an enormous network of women. They're a nonprofit organization based in Massachusetts. They also are in New York, and a few other states, I believe now. But they have a soil division in Massachusetts, and we are very focused on spreading this solution as a path forward, as a viable path forward, and a logical to address so many issues: water, health, food, and food is one of my other passions. Mm-hmm. So what I'm trying to do right now, or what I am doing right now, I'm in the process of collaborating with one of the farms near me, and working with them on putting a couple of soil boxes. They are working on regenerative practices and integrating that into their farm. Coincidentally, through a couple of my girlfriends have been doing this, and I didn't even know it until I went over there and asked if I could do the soil, the composting. So I'm going to use that site as my first. I'm hoping to use that as my first, and I have two other potential ones of private homes that are interested in collaborating. And I think my biggest question for you, and I'm a marketing and sales person, so my biggest question for you, things that I'm thinking about long term, and I'm also thinking about doing like a mobile compost truck, doing like a coffee and compost theme, making it community based. And I talked to your colleague there a couple of weeks ago. We had a phone conference, and it was very inspiring. And so I'd like to do this full time. That's really what I'm working on right now, how to get this to a full time income. And I don't need much, but I do need this significant, decent amount. So, so I'm tossing around. I do believe you can get paid to do what you're passionate about. I made a very good living in renewable energy for a long time, doing great things. I launched 2 community solar programs and felt very good about what I was doing there. But this seems more pressing right now to me, than renewable energy in so many ways. And our food and our nutrients and our illness is Zach Bush is another person I follow immensely. And so here's where I'm coming from. I want to make the biggest impact possible in the most efficient way and the most successful way in my community. So how do we, I think you had some ideas about monetizing this through selling soil and making it it's like a coffee. I used to work at a coffee shop for many years. And so making it more of a local product that's worth more. People are starting to understand nutrients are depleted in our food and in our soil. So do we, craft soil, in other words, is what I'm calling it to folks. So do we build off of that? I think that's your idea, that we do that. So I think you're so much, you're more business savvy in some ways than I am around this. So I would like to hear your thoughts on how you see that playing out and how I can fit in and maybe accelerate this in Massachusetts. I'm already, kind of pedal to the metal right now with it as much as possible, about 10 hours a week. So I'm here to help and get things, really going.
Okay. So a wonderful topic to raise, and it's hard to imagine it today in a world where people, for the most part, don't value the food scraps that are being thrown away. They don't value healthy soil. They're just not aware of it. But we're going to move to a future, and that's what MakeSoil is about. We're going to create a future where it becomes inconceivable to allow earth in the form of the food that has fed us to go to a landfill, or leaves, or grass, like just earth. Earth doesn't belong in a trash can. Earth doesn't belong in a landfill.
And one more thing I forgot to mention, we're in a trash crisis in Massachusetts. Nationwide, the recycling is obviously at a crisis, but we're in a massive trash crisis. They're talking about building rail to ship our garbage out to the Midwest. I'm not even kidding. So I feel like this is an optimal time for your work, our work.
There is no way, right? This delusion that we can throw things away, it doesn't actually is an illusion. So so what we're working together toward, everyone on this call and the hundreds of other soil makers out there now and the thousands users on MakeSoil, we're all working toward creating a future where people value living soil, where they value nutritious soil, where they value these bits of organic matter, and where they value the role that the soil makers are playing in society. So right now, almost nobody's heard the phrase soil maker.
Yeah.
When in reality, the soil maker is one of the most important community and ecological roles that a human can play right now. So we're just closing that education gap day by day. And some people are already beginning to earn income where they're setting up these soil maker boxes, or they have their own composting setup, and they're asking neighbors to pay $5 or $10 a month or $20 a month for the privilege of dropping off their scraps and you making soil out of it. So that is, you're helping them to harmonize their life with the planet. And if they get a taste of it, it feels good and it's worth paying for. So that's one model. It's going to get easier and easier to do this as the message spreads, as the word spreads, as the ethos is continuing to spread and get out there. So it may sound far-fetched, but there are soil makers already. We even have one soil site who charges people, I think, $5 per bucket they drop off.
Okay.
In California, somebody's got that going on. But a fun way to think of this is like, and what I love about what you said is that you're actually, it sounds like, going to be a soil maker at a soil site that's not even at your house.
Right. I live in an apartment building. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's perfect. And so people will say to me, well, I would like to be a soil maker, but I live in an apartment. And I said, well, can you think of across the street or next door, somebody with a house that has a little yard, front yard, backyard, side yard that they might, and they said, oh my gosh, you're right. There is a house there. And this nice old lady who would love for, there'd be some activity in her front yard or backyard. Right. And so I love that you're seeing there are so many spaces to do a little soil making operation. And then there's people like you who can be the soil maker for those. And we think of it as like a reverse vending machine. So there's vending machines all over the world now that are putting usually questionable materials out into the public for a fee, right? And making garbage and usually not too nutritious of stuff. This is a reverse vending machine. This is like a little box where the earth heals itself and where people put things into it. And so there's that. There's also selling the soil. We believe that we will create the artisanal soil making industry together. So just what we've seen happen to coffee, chocolate, and beer, how those have a higher price point now. You can pay anywhere from 50 cents for a beer or $6.50 for a beer or more, based on how much quality has gone into it. So we are simultaneously raising, not raising the price of soil in general, raising the price of quality soil made in an artisanal manner. And the web platform will support that in the future. It'll make it easier for you to market that soil. So that's just a couple ideas there. And even imagine, we also have somebody on the platform who has multiple soil sites around the city. One is at their home, another is at some other place, another somewhere else. And they just go around on their electric bike and they just tend to each one. So it's like,
that's good.
It's a cool model. We're seeing these models arise in society that have never been there before. They're decentralized, they're part-time, there's as much time as you want to make for it, and most importantly, they're regenerative. And so as you've felt, you're kind of in the sustainability movement with power efficiency and stuff like that. We need more jobs that are truly regenerative for the planet.
I agree.
All that is coming, and I know it's hard days today to make a living doing something regenerative for the planet. But that's why we did MakeSoil as a nonprofit, because we know that we need to, MakeSoil itself may one day find a way to generate some revenue to keep our operations running instead of just depending on donors. But we know that we are here to create the regenerative industry and the regenerative economy of soil making with soil makers and soil supporters. So we're working on it every day, Gina. Hang with us and get that soil site going, and we'll keep spreading the word together that soil is valuable and nutritious and worth paying for.
Okay, my other quick question for you was very, very much into documenting the CO2 sequestration that's going on. With community solar, what I used to do, we used to tell people, oh, you're offsetting this much carbon dioxide and so on. Is there a way to test the soil? Is there a way to say, okay, we're capturing, is there a way to quantify this so that we have some sense of the positive outcome of what we're doing?
Yeah, and that's why this is a decentralized, crowdsourced solution at MakeSoil. Because that's not our focus, but we would love our community out there to begin quantifying it better. So what I'll give you are some general pointers, which are, first of all, by that organic matter not going to the landfill, we know that we're preventing methane production. And so the methane production is the thing that must be avoided most of all. And you do that as a soil maker by creating soil instead. Now, of the organic matter going into the soil maker box, some amount of that will escape as CO2, and some amount of the carbon will be locked into stable polymer chains of carbon, which is generally referred to as humic matter. And there are different techniques out there and different temperatures that people keep it at in different times. And but we are going for maximum carbon sequestration. So this is the skill and the art of soil making will continue to mature until we all kind of start seeing data points for what process, what temperature, what time duration allows for the greatest amount of humic matter to accumulate and the least amount of CO2 to escape into the air. And so you'll find some places a soil maker will say, well, with this method, we get finished soil in this amount of time, and we have 60% reduction in the volume of what went in, and we have whatever's left over is 70% humic matter. And then somebody else will say, Well, with their method, there's almost no reduction in the volume. They're getting a very high retention of the amount of carbon. So some of it's you're just eyeballing it, you know?
Right.
And actually a very processing process that's going poorly is actually losing a lot of that carbon and turning into amines and ammonia and all kinds of other things. So you're raising a very important question. But first of all, we know that it's better than going to a landfill, hands down.
At the very least, yep.
At the very least. And then here's where we all get to together really geek out and get really serious about the techniques and the processes that allow for the greatest amount of carbon capture. And again, it's generally about creating that humic matter, those stable polymer carbon chains that are humus.
And we might need a soil scientist to really help set up guidelines around this stuff, because I certainly don't have the capacity to do that.
Yep, and there are soil scientists out there, and I hope more and more of them get involved with MakeSoil, because we need that very technical knowledge. There's one of our soil makers I talked to the other day, Amanda. She's getting trained to be a certified soil microscope operator, right? So to be able to go to your soil site and see what microbes, are they mesophiles, are they thermophiles, what's going on in there, what gives rise to this kind of odor versus this forest floor kind of smell. So we're all going to get very smart about this stuff in the coming years. And we're at the very beginning of the movement, where we're just trying to get people to stop throwing the earth into the trash can today. That's where we are, but we're going to the future. And you can just imagine, as we get thousands and thousands of kids and young people involved in this, and they're real thinkers right now. And what are their minds thinking about? Are they going to go to Wall Street and sell stocks? Or if you invite them to make soil, your soil site, they're going to bring that intelligence to this movement, and they're going to help us answer these questions. So it's really the birth of this movement that we're all at together.
Yeah, and I'm with you. And I was reading some, when I took the Kiss the Ground class, they said, they gave the percentages of privately owned land in the United States, and they had everything broken down if we could do certain things like this on our privately owned land. Are you tapped into those numbers or anything, or is that something that's just way?
No,
really
I don't
getting people.
But thankfully, Kiss the Ground is on top of a lot of those numbers, and they're good. They're good friends of ours, and some of the founders have their operating soil sites in LA.
Oh, good.
Look at their whatever their soil class is called. And Katrina's pointing out that, and he's seen the comments here, For the Love of Bees in Auckland is an organization. And they have an organic market garden where they're measuring this. They're measuring carbon in some way.
Okay, thanks, Katrina.
Take the stage in a minute and tell us a bit more about that.
Okay, thanks.
But last thought that you're having me think of here is just that regenerative agriculture happening. There's a lot of talk of regenerative agriculture these days. It's so good. I moderated a regenerative agriculture panel last year, and I've been on 3 regenerative agriculture panels this year. It's becoming a thing.
Phenomenal.
And so that's one thread that's running. And then the other big thread is the human animal making soil in cities together in a communal way. And if we get both of these things going, where our food is regenerative, we've got to really chance.
Yeah, it's just it parallels so much to my last job, residential versus business, and which channel do you want to pick? And I'm with your channel, because obviously I can't do much with industrial agriculture except buy local. But that there's a lot of effort right now going in that direction and your direction. The residential stuff is where my expertise is, and I also think that's where the movement can really be momentous and quick.
And where that you just talked about, those are the consumers who will then demand regenerative, because once they're getting the experience of regeneration through the making process, they're going to say, "Oh, that's what it feels like to live in harmony with the planet. Well, I want my whole food that I consume to come from this kind of process." And remember, today our starting point is that almost no modern people have had any regenerative experience whatsoever. It's all the consumptive experience. And
Yep.
then maybe it's consume a little less or do it a little more efficiently experience, but
Mhm.
almost nobody's had a regenerative experience at all. And that's
Right.
what they get when they come to your soil site, when they start seeing the earth heal itself. And
Yeah.
that will, because what regenerative agriculture needs more than anything right now
What's that?
is another few billion people who care and who even know what it is,
Right,
and who
right.
demand regenerative agriculture. And then we'll see the industry shift. So that's why these are such beautiful threads to run simultaneously in humanity.
I'm going to work with the children. So in Massachusetts and in the Northeast, recycling, they failed miserably when they tried the adults. And then the reason why it took off and was successful was because they went to the kids.
Yep.
And I happened to be a child when this movement was happening. So this is the path to quick change, in my humble opinion.
And the kids can get through to the adults as well. They'll be
Yeah.
home, and then somebody will throw something in the garbage, and they'll
Yep.
say,
Same
"Daddy,
thing.
that's not garbage. That's the planet," and that's all it takes.
Exactly. And so, so there's real hope with this next generation, I think, and convincing the parents how important this is. I think that's what. So there's tons of good organizations working with children in this state, and familiar with one that I can connect with. But anyway, I don't want to hold everybody else up. I'm very excited. If anybody wants to reach out to me, by all means, please do. And I look forward to working with all of you on this important mission.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Julie.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you joining us. Next up is Elizabeth, who tried to join us earlier. And amongst plenty of other things, I know Elizabeth can also speak to this potential of working with children and working with schools. So I'll just switch you off, Julie, and hand over to Elizabeth. Thank you. Okay, Elizabeth, I'm going to invite you again, as I did last time.
And guys, we're going to be creating a forum on MakeSoil.org so that we can all just connect there together as well, because what we're doing is new. There's people out there making soil, there's places to talk about composting, but there's not really a place to talk about making soil in community as a global social movement to stabilize the biosphere and expand consciousness and regenerate our food system. So that forum is coming. Stay tuned. We'll all be able to hang out there together.
Okay, so Elizabeth, it seems like you're having the same or similar issues, unfortunately.
Oh, that's too bad. Elizabeth is one of our superstar soil makers out there in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah. That's okay. I'll send you something, Elizabeth, that might help you to join. We can try again. And in the meantime, Katrina, if you're there, if you've had your coffee, I will invite you up now. Okay, Katrina, I just sent you the invite there. That seems to be working okay. So Katrina is also a rather super soil maker, and she will tell you all about what she's up to deep in the dark morning of New Zealand. I think.
I've got the fire on, got my morning coffee. 7 a.m. here.
Amazing.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, what time are you there?
It's noon where I am in California at the moment. Sunny's in France.
Yep, it's evening for me.
I think this is really cool, though, that we're just with a click of a button, we're using technology for something really, really healthy and good here. And it's very low carbon way to get this many people all over the earth talking to each other. So I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
It's great to see you here.
So perhaps where you guys, feel free to start where you like, but I'm sure Josh would love to hear where your soil making activities and promotion is at currently, Katrina, and I'm sure you could speak to some of the challenges and the opportunities.
Sure.
Challenge with the capital C these days, huh, Katrina?
Auckland's not the capital, but it's the economic capital, you could say. We've got a massive challenge today for community composters. The The waste team on Auckland Council have put out a draft bylaw that would make sharing waste illegal unless you're certified in a community garden. So I'm happy to put the link up somewhere. I'm sure the submissions can come from around the globe. Auckland's a C40 city. We're proud of being sustainable and eco-friendly and green, but we're not.
I was wondering about that. You kept posting about Auckland City Council looking for submissions, and I was thinking, well, I can't do that. I'm from the other side of the world, but maybe that's what they need to hear then.
Yeah. You've got 12 hours to rally your troops to say, what? New Zealand? You guys are meant to be leading this whole clean green movement.
Right.
The community gardeners think that there's this sort of conspiracy, potentially. I don't want to say too much in case I'm way off track, but we've got, Auckland City's about 1 million people, so it's fairly large, and 2 sections of the city have had this trial food waste collection scheme where it's all picked up by truck once a week and taken to a commercial facility, turned into compost, and then sold back. So if they roll that out over the whole city, we're looking at a 20-year contract. It's millions and millions of dollars that's being invested. So the tenders are out now, and no business is going to invest unless they can guarantee getting 50% of Auckland's food waste, which is a threat to MakeSoil.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see, because I don't believe that the principle of decentralization and regeneration and the immersive transformative experience of taking soil together has really dawned on officials and administrators in a real way at this point. And you know how fast the future is changing now, how fast things are changing now. I think anybody that makes a 20-year plan to do something kind of antiquated like that is going to look pretty silly in just a few short years, you know. So we kind of save them from themselves.
Yes, but the infrastructure required to build these large commercial facilities, they won't build them unless they've got 20 years of food waste scrap collection guaranteed. So yeah, the future moves fast, and we literally have 12 hours to get these submissions in. And people with friends inside council have said that it's going to take thousands of submissions to get them to alter this bylaw. And if that comes from around the globe, you know, we Kiwis, we're on the other side of the world, island nation, and there's a powerful effect of having international eyes and commentary. Okay.
Well, just for those listening out there around the world, some cities definitely have these curbside pickup programs. You might say they're better than nothing. The compliance in those cities is usually quite poor, and also just the transformative effect isn't there. Having one more bin to chuck things in and to treat like just one more form of garbage, it doesn't lead to the transformative effect. And the real opportunity here is for what is currently a municipal obligation to do something about the organic waste problem is a regenerative opportunity for the citizenry. And it's just at this point in time in the human race where no politicians or governments really expect the human race en masse to do anything to get its act together environmentally of its own volition in a participatory way. And on the one hand, we can't blame them too much because there aren't all that many Katrinas in the world right now. But there could be, especially, you know, MakeSoil's only been at it for a year now, especially as we continue to elevate and promote the work that people like her are doing as soil makers in their communities. So, gosh, I wish we had another couple years to really prove to them this alternative model. And for all of you listening out there in other cities like the Tampa Bay area, the St. Petersburg area, where we have a high density of soil sites going live now, we really need to demonstrate to the world, to city administrators, that there is an alternative, decentralized, distributed way of dealing with the organic waste issue, and that it's best dealt with in a distributed manner because it's a distributed problem. It's happening wherever people are. And how much more elegant to deal with that with a community soil site every 3 or 4 blocks where children's minds are being transformed and people are having community together, than to solve it with one more giant truck that gets 3 miles to the gallon and then to go to another facility where a bulldozer pushes it around. It's just a much more beautiful way that's possible. So,
I wonder if it's possible to get cracking on some marketing on a sort of decentralized way where people with soil sites who enjoy what they're doing could take the logo, make a, you know, Canva image, and we can start sort of posting those around, but that you'd recognize that, oh, that's another one of them.
yeah.
And bit by bit, we actually kind of get attention that way. I had a fascinating conversation. My sister is head of Department of Science at a high school in a rural town in New Zealand. A lot of dairy farms, so there's a lot of cow manure. I'm passionate about cow manure, being a biodynamic gardener. And she asked me to come down and do a free session with a group of kids, and that's an underfunded state school. She can't pay me any more than petrol money. I'd be sleeping on the couch with my, you know, hanging out with my nieces and nephews. And I started asking her about the economics of the school's budget for removing waste. You would think she'd know. No idea. And I've said, I mean, I've met with a sustainable schools advisor in Auckland Council who says that he can get gardening higher up in the curriculum by demonstrating that the cost savings by not throwing food, paper, green waste away actually make it pay for itself. And so I said, well, what does your school spend on waste? And she had no idea. She says it's either above her pay scale or below her pay scale. But those sorts of questions, we can say, well, you know, where's the money going? Where's the taxpayer money going?
Yes.
And who was the speaker before me? I thought it was Elizabeth, but maybe it was...
It was Julie, I believe.
Julia. Okay, Julie. Julie's question about how do we make money out of this. At the moment, people throw their rubbish away practically for nothing. I mean, here where I live, it's, I think, $3 a 200-litre wheelie bin. But it costs more than that. You know, we don't see it because it's in our rates, but every litre of fuel, every hour of the truck driver, the people involved in that process are all getting paid.
Yeah. But
the consumer doesn't see that.
That's right. Yeah, the taxes go up rather inconspicuously. And
they do, yeah. Another, on the topic of money, at the school where I teach last week, we've been doing hot composting with the green waste for about 6 months now. And I've had 5 sessions with a new teacher who's taken over the role, and he just didn't get it. And week after week, I sort of coaxed him away from, you know, splitting the class in half, and actually asked him to come and stand next to me and observe the composting process. And finally, we got one bin turned into the other, and it's hot and it's fresh and it's aerated, and the steam coming out of the middle was amazing. So I sent the boys to go get the thermometer, and the look on their faces as we, you know, stuck it in and they watched the dial crawl up. It was 59 degrees, which I think might be around the 130, 140 mark. I don't know the Celsius Fahrenheit conversion, but their eyes, it was like you said before, what's heating this? Where's the motor? Is it nuclear? Is it invisible? Far out. So for the hour of that lesson, kids 2 by 2 were poking the thermometer into different corners of the pile to find the hot patch. But and while they were doing that, we were building the next cubic meter next door, and the teacher actually started directing the kids, and at the end of it, I said to him, you don't need me anymore. You've got it. And the pride on his face when he just went, yeah, I can do this.
Wow.
And then walking back to the classroom, we talked about one teacher that lives next to a farm with cow manure, another one that lives next to the beach, she can get seaweed. There's an arborist, there's another girl that rides horses, you know, in a school with 700 kids, all the green waste inputs are there to tap into. And he's up for the challenge. It's so cool.
So I just want to point out the transformative, the story that Katrina's just told of personal transformation and awe and wonder at watching the earth repair itself, our participation, and the change in mindset that's happening with the teachers and the students. That scene that she just described, we just need that to happen a few 100 million more times, and we've got this planet on a good track. So it's really, the good news is we just have to scale a rather simple and beautiful experience over and over and over again. And the challenge is that it does need to happen millions and millions of times worldwide, but the good news is it doesn't have to be a massively complicated environmental message at first. It's a gateway experience that really leads to the rest. So that scene that she just described is just the perfect little vignette that we see happening all over, and it's just time to do our part to multiply that over and over again.
The school, it's a primary, intermediate, and right next door, like they border each other as a high school. So the students are graduating, going to the senior school. And at the senior school, they have an environmental group, which has traditionally been the students in the last 2 years of high school. And they're busy with exams and they've got social lives, and it's sort of, there's a couple of active months in the year, but otherwise it doesn't do much. This year, for the first time, the environmental group has students from every year of the high school. So the brand new younger students coming in, they're fresh from the junior school where they've been chicken monitors and worm farmers, and they're coming into the high school saying, what do we do with recycling? This is a disgrace. And so a waste minimization project I had drafted a year ago, I've actually handed over to the high school. They've got 6 large food scrap collection buckets that have been rejected from this trial in other parts of the city. They've spoken with the cafeteria, they've done a waste audit, they've got a parent with chickens, and they're going to rotate buckets on a daily basis. And the vegetable garden is going, oh, we could do with some homemade soil. And finally, it's kind of coming together for these 2 schools. So it's just now to get it onto MakeSoil and
And so many of these young people, as they're confronted with different career opportunities in the future, or they try different jobs, you know, I think many of them will find themselves staring out of the window of an office and say, you know, I just never had such a good time as when I was making soil with my friends. And so we're going to do our best to make that a real livelihood and opportunity for that to be a real viable job for them, because they've had the experience with you and with these soil sites. And once people have that experience, it's a real point of comparison for them. Whereas the world has never had that experience. So they're choosing from one sort of job that makes them feel dead inside to one that maybe is going to be a little better, they hope. But wow, there's nothing like regenerating the planet together with your friends, and to see the even overcoming the divide in ages, where it's just doesn't matter what state we're in, we're all on the same team with healing the planet together. How beautiful is that?
That's cool. Yeah.
Katrina, is there a link that to the Auckland City Council? Can you make it easy? Can you paste it into this chat room here?
Yep, certainly. Yeah.
Give comments.
I'll do that as soon as I'm finished. Anything else from me? You've got someone else waiting, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for that contribution, Katrina.
Thank you.
And with our time is nearing an end, but we still have time, I think, to hear from Elizabeth. There's so much more to offer than 10 minutes can allow, but we will do what we can. Thank you, Katrina. I'll close your video feed. And
she's coming up. I did chat with some council members and officials in Christchurch when I was visiting there in New Zealand, and this was really the first they'd really thought of the decentralized model. And they might have just been putting me on, but we talked about giving citizens a tax credit if they opted out of the wheelie bin curbside model. and if they instead entered into a relationship with a soil maker in a soil site. And as forward thinking as that would be for, and scary as that sounds for a city or an administrator to do, gosh, I wish Christchurch City Council would realize that if they did that, if they modeled that for the world, that yes, they have a curbside program, but they'll allow the citizens to get their $100 back and enter into a soil site relationship instead, they would make history and become a model for cities to follow all over the world. So I really hope some city out there becomes that forward thinking and gives it a shot, because you don't just there's a better opportunity here than just to do what the last 300 cities did. There's a real new opportunity here. So now we have Elizabeth on screen. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Success.
You've been very busy.
Yeah, boy. It's nice to have the summer here. Things do slow down a little bit for us, but it's been a busy year. And I met Josh when I think it was January in St. Pete. I was visiting a SUAC meeting, which is Sustainable Urban Agriculture Coalition. And I was in the middle of a very busy year. I operate a nonprofit called Tampa Bay Farm to School. And we build and support youth gardens. And this year we launched a grant-funded plant-based cooking program to close the circle, to show kids how they can grow and then they can cook and how good it can taste. And it's a pop-up kitchen that we take to their gardens in their physical space. And so it's been a very busy year. And then in January, I met Josh and got very interested in soil making. And at the time, I was talking with one of our school partners who needed a new project at their middle school. And I felt this was the right project, really incredibly ideal for this particular school, this middle school. We had a new principal in. The school's been failing for some years and going through a big transition now. And so the district just put in a really very energized administration. So he was very open to ideas. And this is the same school that 7 years ago, a community garden. We built extensive student gardens, and then as happens, there was a cycle and people came in that didn't follow up, and it's been fallow for a few years. So they brought in this fellow, and he called me in and wanted to reinvigorate the partnership. And I had just been to your talk, and I said, we've got to do this here. First of all, the student beds are in some disrepair and are going to require some updates. And so it needed a regenerative type project to bring new energy to it. And I know this school extremely well. My son went to this middle school. It's across the street from my house. And it is a public site. It is used by the city. The track next door is a community track that's used by both the school and the city. You can gain access to the gardens as a public person. So I don't know if Sonny, if you're able to pull up the bins Absolutely. That we built. But I hopped on this. He green-lighted it, and I got together with the STEM teacher, and we had STEM students design compost bins as a learning exercise. Mm-hmm. And these are the result. Now, the students, I also brought in the USF School of Architecture. My neighbor happens to share that program over at University of South Florida. And so they actually built it for us. And on top of an extremely busy year, we literally built 2 large school gardens with in-ground irrigation, everything, launched a culinary program, and then I added this on top of it. And I fundraised. I got the city of Temple Terrace to give money for the redwood that we built them out of. And so so this summer, what I'm doing now and we have 11 soil supporters. The community likes it. There's a lot of neighbors nearby that are coming on board. And I'm getting it up and going this summer with the plan is for students to take it over in the fall. Well, I mean, our volunteers will be teaching students how to manage it, but it's up and running. It's doing well. We moved the soil from one bin to the other last weekend. Lots of happy bugs and happy worms. So we're getting donations from local health food store for compost. And I've got right next to, the reason I knew this was such a perfect location is that an independent tree company dumps clean mulch that they have to pay otherwise for use in the community garden. And that's our browns. So we have everything right there, water source, everything. And it's just ideal. So I'm real excited about it as a school project next year. And we'll be working with either a science teacher or possibly either the honors students, or I'm imagining probably the STEM students, to take it over as a project. And I think we can turn it into a fundraiser where we're going to ask people on our soil maker list to please donate $5 to the school.
Yeah.
So that it can become that. So, yeah.
I think a soil making activity could really be a key feature of the earth science curriculum. There's just so much to learn there. So way to go, very well done. And you've got the making soil itself, very powerful. Of course, you take the next step, and when people touch that living soil, they want to grow something. So giving young people the opportunity to plant a seed, to nourish what grows from it, and to eat what grows from it, we know that increases the variety of food in their diet, their willingness to eat new foods and healthier foods. And in my experience, anybody who has gone out and grown something for a few months and tended to it is a lot less likely to waste food in the future, because they actually have some sense of what it takes to produce food.
Yes, all true. Absolutely. I did want to add a tangential point. As someone that runs a nonprofit and is constantly pondering the question of how to engage more people, I think that's the light that came on for me in your talk, is that my circle tends to be parents of caring parents that are interested in what their kids are doing. But the circle doesn't widen much. You're either interested in gardening or you're not. And also, I'm a student at the USF College of Global Sustainability, and a lot of the interns in our program are sustainability students. So there's all this connection into concepts of sustainability. And composting gives us the opportunity to make the entry point much lower, the bar much lower for involvement. And that's, I think, probably the biggest reason why I got so excited about, I mean, all the other reasons, are great, but how do we expand? How do we get more people in our world?
Right.
And
right.
This can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because whereas gardening and growing food is a smaller subset of the population will make the time and experience of that, being a soil maker is available to even more people. And just being a soil supporter, a human being who says, I know that this stuff left over on my plate or what I've left over from making dinner does not belong in the trash and ought to be turned back into soil. That's not a niche hobby. That's what ultimately every human being is going to realize. So it is a much wider funnel. Everyone can participate in this. For every soil maker, there's 1,000 people who would be willing supporters. So beautiful. Well, it looks like we're bang out of time right now, 12:30. My time.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much to all our contributors and to you, Josh. I think that's a nice point to end on, the insight that making soil is one of the most universally accessible ecological acts, because no matter where you are, if you're lucky, coming into contact with nature through the food you eat 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So that's why we're doing it.
And lastly, I just want to say that it was really energizing for me to talk with all of you who are the local heroes actually doing this. And even though our numbers are small right now and our roles are humble, they really are some of the most important roles that we can play in society today. So I'm so grateful that all of you have heeded the call, and many of you have been making soil before you ever even met me. But I'm just super inspired. So please keep it up. Please keep sharing the pictures and the news of all the things you're doing out there. And we'll look back one day together when the soil maker role is a recognized, super important life changing, planet-saving role in society. But these are the early days, folks. We're all in this together, the very beginnings of the global movement. But for all those watching at home, you've seen the faces. These are real people having real transformative experiences and sharing them with dozens and hundreds of people in their own communities. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.